There is definitely an education gap in architecture around business basics. You may be an amazing designer, but if you're lacking in business education, you'll struggle to fulfill your potential. Today, I'm joined by Ray Brown of ArchiBiz to share his thoughts on the foundational business education that you need to bridge that gap and set your architecture practice up for success. In this episode of Architecture Business Club, the weekly podcast for solo and small firm architecture practice owners just like you who want to build a profitable, future-proof architecture business that fits around their life. I'm the host, John Clayton, and if you want a business in architecture that gives you more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment, then go to architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint and download the Architecture Business Blueprint. It's the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists and architectural designers, and it's absolutely free as a gift from me. Now let's discuss foundational business education. Ray Brown is a business coach and entrepreneur. He built and sold several businesses in Scotland before relocating to Australia with his family in 2005. Ray has coached everyone from startups to top executives of major companies. He also chairs multiple company boards, but today his main focus is coaching and mentoring architectural practices. Ray recognised there was a significant gap in the education provided to architects around running a business. So he founded ArchiBiz to help ambitious architects build profitable and sustainable businesses whilst maintaining good design standards. You can learn more about the ArchiBiz Business Foundations Programme at archibiz.global/BFP. Ray, welcome to Architecture Business Club.
Oh, thanks, John. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's always a privilege. It's really nice to be invited. So thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I enjoyed our last conversation so much. It would have been rude for me not to invite you on the show for another one. Ray, you're originally from Scotland. Is it Aberdeen originally? Is that right?
It is indeed. The frozen north, I think they call it. And I came to Australia looking for a bit more sun. And my daughter was here and wanted to start a sailing business. The only thing that went wrong in that was Melbourne's not the best place for weather. It's a bit of a well-kept secret, lovely place to live. But January through March is pretty good. But beyond that, it can be a little bit up and down, too hot or too cold.
Yeah, you must enjoy life in Melbourne, though. You wouldn't have stayed there for so many years otherwise.
Oh, no, it's a great place to live. I tend to try and keep that secret going, if you don't mind. It's got lots of culture, lots of food. We're lucky enough to have a place down at the beach, so we can be there in an hour, and it's pretty good.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I actually was fortunate enough to work in Melbourne for a few months many years ago. It was during a year-long backpacking trip, and I ended up working for an architectural practice in Melbourne. I lived in North Melbourne, not far from Victoria Market, and worked for a practice out in East Kew. And I absolutely loved it. I had a great time there. I was very tempted to stay, to be honest. It wasn't for the fact that I was really excited about visiting a few of the countries that I'd planned to visit afterwards, that I may have ended up staying there a bit longer. And then I met who is now my wife, and then that kind of like scuppered the plans to return to Melbourne. So that kind of the plans were on hold for a while, and then they've been on permanent hold ever since.
If we continue a relationship, you never know, you might be out here visiting and visiting the deck and drinking a beer. It'd be nice. I'd love to see you here.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'd love to do that. We could talk about this for hours, I'm sure, but we're actually here to talk about foundational business education, specifically for architecture practices. So I'm really excited to hear about this. So, Ray, I want to ask, what would you consider foundational business education to be?
Yeah, but it's a phrase that we've worked really hard to get to. We've been in business for 5 years. And it's only really in the last 6 months that we've finally honed in on the words. And I would encourage architects to see that process as not something that you immediately say, this is who you are, this is where you fit in the market, this is what you do. It sometimes takes time. So foundational business education for us is we aim to fill the gap that architects tell us about every single day. We don't get taught about business at university. We are well-meaning amateurs when it comes to business. All of those things. And unfortunately, that leads into a little bit of what I call woe is me thinking. If you don't have the education, you need to go out and get the education. And the two analogies we use, one is driving a car. You wouldn't buy a car, jump in the car and go out on the road because a car's dangerous. It's dangerous to your health, to your well-being, all of those things. And business is very similar. We can lose a lot of money in business. You can become very stressed. And really, it's a tough existence if you don't get it right. But the good news is that business is a simple game. We used to use chess as an analogy, and then we moved to drafts or checkers. And one of our clients said, look, the way you put it across, it's not that difficult. It's more like snakes and ladders. So snakes and ladders take 10 minutes to explain. Without that 10 minutes, it's just a mystery. Ladders, reptiles, coloured squares. But you can teach a 5-year-old snakes and ladders in probably 10 minutes. And business is a bit the same. Without the basic rules of the game or the foundational business education, you're really at high risk of coming unstuck.
I love that simple analogy there that you've given us. I guess that starting a business in architecture can be bad for your health if you don't know what you're doing. And having some basic instructions to lay those foundations is got to be something surely that's essential really for everybody.
Yeah, I think the paradoxical thing is that architects are very tempted to go into their own business. Okay, and I think the statistics, something like 70% of architects end up working for themselves in some form. But the problem is that they tend to drift into architecture. They do some work on the side, and then they get a bigger job, and then suddenly they say, I've got enough to pay my wages, and I can leave my paid job. The problem with that is you're not setting up a business, you're creating a job for yourself. Okay, it's only over time that people realize, hold on, there's more to this business thing than I thought. And we meet a lot of disillusioned architects. They love architecture, they're passionate about the profession, but they just don't understand the business side. They don't make money. In a lot of cases, they're paid less than they would be paid working for somebody else. And they've got that, probably the partner telling them, why are you doing that when you could be working here and we could live a better lifestyle? So we see ourselves in the business of reducing that stress and teaching people the basics. It really is not complicated.
I think that's so true. I can really relate to that from my own personal experience as well. That I thought I had a business, but I'd really just recreated my old job. It's taken quite a long time to realize that, and to have had some business education at the very beginning would have allowed me to take a shortcut and to have been far more successful with my own small practice than I was, because I had to learn a lot of it from mistakes and, making the mistakes and then, learning from them. But to have had some foundational business education at the very beginning would have been, potentially transformational.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's interesting you use that word transformational, because we've been working on how we explain to people what we do. And it really is about process-driven transformation. That's the story. There's a lot of a narrative in architecture covers a whole lot of ground, but typically architecture is very hard. Nobody understands us. It's hard to sell our value. All of those things may be true, but architects, they work in a nice office. There's a need for the product. They don't have factories, vehicles, distribution warehouses. It's a pretty simple business that you sell a service, you deliver that service well, and you've effectively got a good business. One of the fallacies we find is that people think, if I only had more business, if I only had more projects, I would be fine. We just need to fill the pipeline or we're going to run out of work. And it really is a fallacy, because if you don't have a well-run business sitting behind those projects, more work is probably the last thing that you need. So building those solid foundations across really what we call the 4 Ps, the practice, the projects, the people, and the perception, that's really the key to running a good business. And understanding where are the opportunities in each of those areas to sharpen the business and squeeze out a little bit more, whether that be revenue or profit. There's huge opportunities in there.
Okay, well, we're going to dig into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Before we do, why is this not happening already in our industry as standard? Why are we not? Why is it not just the standard that we do get educated in this?
Well, that's a great question. And there's a lot about architects and architecture I didn't understand. I had a conversation with one of my clients this afternoon, and I was asking him, he told me about a new house he's designing for himself. And he did this. He said, oh, it looks a bit like this, and there's a slab. And I said, why has it got a peak? Because all the architecture I see is flat roofed and things. And he was telling me about something that happened, I think it was in the 1930s, the Greece Convention or something, where there was a real decision among architects to leave the past behind. And I think that kind of thinking and that leadership from the top has been very influential in architecture. And I was on a panel not so many years ago with someone, I was speaking about business, I had one of my clients there, and an older architect, let's put it like that, grabbed the microphone at one point, 300 people in the audience, most of them struggling architects, and he said, what you people have got to realize is we're not an industry or a business, we're a profession. Now, I don't know what that means. I really do not know what that means. If you run your own business, whether you like it or not, you're in business. And that smacks to me of a little bit of arrogance. It smacks of a little bit of naivety. It's pretty widespread in the industry that the leadership in the industry, and particularly the industry bodies, we've had, in some cases, there's real exceptions in that they're quite happy to embrace what we do. But without naming names, there are certain big organizations that either they see us as competition or not required, or we don't need to be taught about that stuff. We've been doing it a long time. So that we come up against that a lot. But to be honest, we've stopped trying. We deal with the people who, we say we're looking for energized searchers, people who are looking for a better way, looking for a better outcome. And we can deliver that better outcome. So they're happy, we're happy, and the ignorant mass is just, well, good luck to them.
That's really interesting. There's a couple of things in that there, isn't there? That thing of some of those preconceptions that there are within the industry about, I think we're often sort of led to believe that, your work, like just you show your great design work and that should just bring in the customers. And it's like, there's this whole tortured artist thing of like, architecture is different to other businesses. It's different. It's not the same. It's, it's interesting now that point you make that, business is business. If you want to be successful in the architecture industry, you want to have a successful practice, actually, it's a service business. Whether you're serving your clients, helping design a building for them, or whether it's some other type of consultancy, it's a service business essentially. And a lot of those business principles that should apply universally. It's not like we're sort of, it's architecture, so it needs this totally different way of doing things. I think there is a kind of few misconceptions there about business and architecture generally.
You used the word a few there. I think it's a much bigger number than just a few. People buy things to solve their problems. Okay? That everything, not just architecture. And typically people buy confidence that you're going to solve my problem and perceived value that you're not going to overcharge for what you're doing. And that can be a learned skill, how you communicate that value. So our business started, and we were told to start a new business, you need market research. So we got 10 architects around the table, and my business partner at the time, she and I sat down and we brainstormed a few questions. What are we going to ask these guys? And number one question was, what's the value of architecture? Yeah. We were thrown out of that restaurant at 10:30, and we hadn't got to question number 2, okay? Because they were still arguing amongst themselves and big discussion. If you're in an industry that finds it that hard to communicate your value, and there is value in architecture, but I'm not sure I could articulate it properly, even after 5 years of working with architects. Because a lot of them are different. You need to position yourself properly as an architectural practice. And if you're one of the many architects around who puts a picture of a building on the homepage of the website and more or less says, if you want one of those, come to us, then you're missing such a huge opportunity to differentiate, because whether you like it or not, there's a lot of people in your market who will be able to deliver a very similar building in the same time, same way, same process. So you've really got to find ways of being a better business. It's such a big opportunity for people. It's to run a better business so that you get more work and you differentiate yourself from your competition.
Remember, don't forget to download the Architecture Business Blueprint, the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists and architectural designers. You can grab the blueprint without any charge at architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint. And if you're enjoying this episode, then please leave a 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show. So, Ray, let's swing things back around then to something that we mentioned a moment ago. I wanted to just dig in actually to your approach. Like, what is the ArchiBiz approach to foundational business education? Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I could. If you're like a lot of people. You're an architect every day of the week, and you see that configuration of letters. But when you see it in a different context, you say arch instead of arc. No, ArchiBiz Architect. I'll let you off this time.
Oh, thanks, Ray.
Foundational business education. It's just, what are the basics? It's understanding, what are the things related. So there are really 3 key areas, or 4 key areas that we speak about. We encourage people to meet once a month to speak about the business, to work on the business, not in the business. It's what we call a board meeting in architects. So we're too small to have a board meeting. But then, when do you speak about the business? When do you speak about strategy? Oh, well, we just have an occasional meeting of the directors or whatever. So start with finance. Finance, again, it's a very simple process. It's the business scorecard. Where are you winning? Where are you losing? What's going well? What's not? Operations is the second component. That's how you do what you do. So improving your utilization, improving your budgeting, improving your management of projects. Then we've got sales and marketing. Are you bringing in the right project at the right time at the right price? Yeah? And finally, there's projects. So every business needs to have a range of ongoing projects that may be new software or a new office or something that's a standalone, time-limited project that needs to get reported somewhere. Okay, so that monthly meeting allows the management of the business or the leaders of the business to look at the finance, to the operation, to the sales and marketing, and the progress in the various projects that are ongoing. And what we bring is the templates to make that overseeing really easy. Okay, there are standard things in business. The one that I like the most, if I was an architect, I would want to know the 6 months rolling average of work secured. Okay, so picking up work in an architecture practice can be lumpy, but if you take the last 6 months of work that you've won, you divide it by 6 and you record that number. If you record that every month, that will show you whether you're picking up enough work to pay the bills in the future and make a profit, or if that's dwindling and you may have to cut resources. So it's all about looking to the future, forecasting, and not looking to the past in terms of how the business performs.
I love that. There's a couple of great takeaways in there. That's just a really useful KPI, key performance indicator that any practice could use. They could use that right away now, couldn't they? That sort of 6 months of projects secured. I love what you're doing with the monthly board meeting. Can we just recap on those different categories there? So there was finance.
Finance, number 1. So finance is the scorecard. Are we winning? Are we losing? Operations is number 2. So there are KPIs around operations too. Utilization, throughput, all of those things. The amount of return that strictly speaking, architects are in a very simple business in terms of business model. We buy hours and we convert that into revenue. Okay. There's a lot of design stuff that goes in the middle. Absolutely. That's the product. But the business model is buying hours, selling hours. So making that conversion is the operations piece, and that needs to be as efficient as possible. And thirdly, we've got sales and marketing, which is bringing in the right work at the right time through the business. And the last one is projects, special projects to improve the business.
And again, it's a really simple framework that you've integrated that into the program that you have. But also there's something there that I think that if maybe there's somebody out there that's listening to the show and they're maybe thinking, I maybe don't have the resources right now, or the money to invest in a program like Raise, that they could actually create their own board meeting, or maybe they could have a buddy that they could do that with. They're not going to obviously get access to ready-made frameworks and that additional support. But if you're looking at making a marginal improvement in what you're doing already, that would be such a useful thing that people could start doing.
I think, though, and much as I don't want to disagree with the host, but this is an investment. It's not a cost. And if you're short of money, this program costs $2,000 US, $1,990, whatever it is. What we find is a lot of architectural practice, they'll spend much more than that on photographs of a building. They finish a building and it's going to be done by a professional. It's going to be laid out by somebody that sets up the stage to be photographed. I have nothing against that. But to put that amount of value on that and not get the basic business education, and the way to look at the business education is you're going to get a return on that investment for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The number of people who've said to me that I wish I'd done your program 25 or 30 years ago because it would have changed my life. Okay, I'll be implementing stuff now, but had I known this back then, life would have been a lot better. So in terms of lifetime value, we give people lifetime access to the product. We're always adding to it. We've got a community. We've got regular forums. It should be seen as an investment, and an investment that people say, I've got to come up with a really good reason for not doing this. Okay. Why would I not do this? And shortage of money at that level shouldn't be a constraint, because that, if you can't raise that amount of money to do the program or speak to us about spreading the cost over time, then you've got to look in the mirror and say, am I really in business here?
I can't disagree with anything that you've said there. I guess I was using the example more with like startups in mind. I've had some conversations recently with some people that are literally just starting out, which is an argument to say it would be the perfect time for them to do the program. They don't have a pipeline of work already kind of lined up, maybe before they're ready to make the investment, which I appreciate. It's not actually a lot of money really in the world of running a business. It's actually, as you say, you could spend more on a set of photos for a project.
I think it's a really good conversation to be had. And it's not me banging the drum and saying buy our program. Buy someone else's program, or get yourself a business coach locally. I'm not in the business. We're not the only people doing this kind of work. But I would come back to that startup. We sell the program to a lot of startup people, and they're the ones who are going to do well. Okay, because they're thinking from day one that they're a business owner, not an architect exclusively. Okay, they're getting some work and winning some money, and get the systems and processes set up at the beginning. Okay, business is not a no-cost startup. Okay, architects tend to take it like that you've got some work and now I can feed the family and do the stuff. I do think that ends up with you having a job rather than a business. So the choice is yours. Are you going out on your own to feed the family and do your own work, which is obviously often the driving force, or do you really want to be in business, and that business happens to be architecture?
And what I hope is that by people that are in those early stages, by accessing things like this podcast and listening to these conversations, that we can help educate them in the value of investing in themselves and their business and doing it as early as possible, because it can save so much time, stress and hassle, and set you up for success far sooner than otherwise. Because I mentioned earlier that I made just about every mistake possible, and it's because of that lack of business education at the very beginning. But I think that the time when people probably need that education most, they have to kind of get to this realization point themselves that, oh yeah, I do need to invest in this thing. People aren't always there when they need to be, even though there's a solution there for them that can help them out. They might not be at the point when they are quite ready to go ahead with it. So I hope that, people will listen to this and think, whoa, actually, this is a knowledge gap that I have. And actually listening to this, I do need to do something about it, and perhaps a bit sooner than I would have done previously.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think there is a movement around. Okay, we shouldn't have been able to set up ArchiBiz 5 years ago and be virtually the only people, we think, who are providing a practical, holistic, systems-based program specifically for architects. Okay, there's lots of people out there. There lots of webinars. There's lots of courses. There's lots of things. But typically, what happens is you attend a course and then you come back tomorrow into a business that's really working hard. And when do you find time to put it in? And how do I reconcile the financial advice I'm getting with the marketing advice I'm getting? And what we think we bring to the party is this is how to set priorities, and this is how to really evolve your business in this 1 hour meeting a month, 1.5 hours at the very most. And what we say is if you make 5 decisions every month that improves your business, that's 60 in a year. That will transform your business. That's process-driven transformation in action. So there's no magic wand. This is not a unicorn. We have lots of clients who were losing money, making a little, losing a little. And now the target that we set our clients is 15 to 20% net profit after a salary is paid at a market rate paid to the people working in it, including the owners. So if you're not getting 15 to 20% return on your investment and creating employment and the work you're doing in the market, you really need to, as I say, look in the mirror and say, am I running a real business, or is this something that needs work?
There's a misconception there with having a business or running a business or being in business. We often say that we run a business, whereas actually you've created a job. You might be in business, but you don't necessarily have a business. And that's an interesting distinction there, which I just wanted to pick up on because it has come up on other occasions as well in other conversations. That's been really interesting, Ray. Thanks for talking us through that. I guess I want to try and round things up now. What would be the main thing that you'd like everyone to take away from this conversation?
Well, I suppose beyond getting some foundational business education, if you want one specific thing, it would be around financial literacy. Okay. And that's something that architects will say, I don't want to be an accountant, and I'm an architect. And I was 38 and had 3 businesses, and I really didn't know the difference between a profit and loss and a balance sheet. Okay. We cover that in the program. And when I used to be running courses for fairly senior managers, I would say, do you want me to go through the basics of finance? And most people said yes, because you don't get taught that. And your accountant, with the best will in the world, accountants are not very good teachers. You don't see that as part of their role. They're about accuracy and all that stuff. So getting some financial literacy at a basic level, so you know regularly how your business is performing, both forecasting and historically. So you want early warning. You want what we call lead indicators, not lag indicators, not something that tells you where you've been in the past, but something that says, I've got a pretty good feel for where we'll be in 6 months' time or a year. So that would be my key. And that would be the same advice to any business owner. If you don't have basic financial literacy, then you really are missing a big piece of the jigsaw.
Brilliant. Sage advice. Ray, was there anything else that you wanted to add that we haven't covered?
Oh, that's a great question, and we've covered a lot. And I'm a very passionate, hope that it's come across that I am passionate about helping architects. And I'm just so glad that there seems to be a groundswell of recognition that this is required, particularly from some of the younger leaders in architecture. And I would just encourage everybody to reach out and not necessarily buy something tomorrow, but find out what they're not buying. Okay, find out what they're missing, and not perpetuate this. Architecture is different. Nobody understands this. Life's hard. Nobody wants to hear that story. They want to speak to it. There are plenty successful, profitable architectural businesses out there, and we deal with a lot of them. So I have no time for the doom and gloom stories.
Oh, absolutely not. There's too much negativity out there already. We don't need any more of that, do we? I like to kind of concentrate on the positive side of things, and there are a lot of positive things that we can talk about. So, thank you so much, Ray. There's one other question that I wanted to ask, and it's nothing to do with architecture. Just a regular question that I like to ask all of the guests. I love to travel and discover new places, and I just wondered if you could tell me about one of your favourite places and what you love about it.
Well, I think if people look up a place called Mount Martha, which is an hour out of Melbourne, we're fortunate enough to go down there most weekends. It's got the most beautiful beach, and the beach is a row of very colourful beach boxes. The beach is pristine. When we bought our place down there, it was pretty unknown. It's getting a little bit more popular now, but I've travelled many places and been on many beaches, but none of them match up to Mount Martha on the Mornington Peninsula. And the extra bit on that is that within 25 minutes of my house, there are 65 vineyards. So there's plenty wine tasting and lunches to be had around the peninsula. So great place to be.
That sounds fantastic. Ray, thanks again. Thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise with us. I really appreciate it. Could you let everybody know where is the best place to connect with you online if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, happy to. You can find me on LinkedIn, Ray Brown, with ArchiBiz, or my email address is ray@archibiz.global. So I would encourage you to go and check out the Business Foundations program, or reach out to me directly. I'm quite happy to have a chat. Always up for a Zoom call to speak about architectural business and how we can help.
Brilliant. And can you please remind everyone the web address for the Business Foundations program? Can you remind everyone of that, please?
archibiz.global/BFP.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Ray.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Architecture Business Club. If you liked this episode, think other people might enjoy it, or just want to show your support for the show, then please leave a glowing 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean so much to me and makes it easier for new listeners to discover the show. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on most social media platforms. Just search for @Mr. John Clayton. The best place to connect with me online, though, is on LinkedIn. You can find a link to my profile in the show notes. Remember, running your architecture business doesn't have to be hard, and you don't need to do it alone. This is Architecture Business Club.